The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
It was going to be a full show even without breaking news, and now, of course, we have the story of this shooting at a U.S. Navy yard in Washington, D.C. The story, literally, as we are going on air, Lewis, the press conference involving the D.C. mayor, police chief, and fire chief is still going on. The information is not all there yet, as is often the case, and in fact, they may not even have all of the suspects. So we will tell you what we know so far and tell you what of it is kind of speculation that we're getting from authorities. A gunman was armed with what is being described as a double-barreled shotgun, although others have described it as a rifle and maybe a handgun. And he opened fire today inside a building at the Washington Navy Yard. And at least 4 people have been killed. At least 6 have been wounded, although it is not completely clear at this time how high that number is going to go. And they are also looking for 2 additional suspects. And I don't know if people can hear that, but we seem to have quite a first responder situation going on outside our own studio. There has been this primary suspect who has been neutralized. I assume that means killed. But there are potentially 2 more suspects, Lewis. A white man in a military uniform and a black male around 50 years old, maybe in a military-style uniform. So far, the statements have been that it is not clear, there is not specific information that these individuals are members of the military, but that they were last seen wearing uniforms that were similar to or actual military uniforms. So that's what we have so far. The initial suspect, black male, approximately 5'10" to 6 feet tall, 170 pounds, wearing a black shirt and a black hat. We don't have that much more information at this point, Lewis. We know that the media coverage of this has been all over the place. We're going to not get into speculation about any aspect of this. We have no idea on motives. We have no idea how the individual got inside or what pretense was used to get inside what is normally a very secure facility. But we do know that it was a horrifying scene and continues to be, as we have the potential of up to 2 more shooters. Very scary stuff.
Yeah, it's another sad incident. You know what? It's funny. After all these tragedies we see, my first instinct is to just ignore all media for like a good week or 2 before I start actually looking into the details of what's happening in this incident.
Yeah, and it's tough because we're a show that tapes we record our show early in the afternoon. And if we don't mention this, by the time this story goes to air tonight, for example, on Free Speech TV or something like that, the story is noticeably absent, and we get emails saying, how are we ignoring what is a major news story? At the same time, we don't have that much information, so I think the best thing to do is to say, we're aware of the story, here's the information we have, look up the descriptions, look up the information that is being released by authorities, and we'll have more information and obviously analysis as we get it. I guess that's kind of the happy medium.
Right. That's really all we can do responsibly anyway.
What we need to remember is when these shootings happen, be aware that you instantly, no matter what the firearms involved are, no matter how they were obtained, no matter whether it was a place where firearms were or were not allowed, do not allow yourself to fall into these circular, go-nowhere debates with the gun rights enthusiasts who immediately start making these blanket claims that every single gun owner is responsible and respectful up until the moment at which they use their gun improperly, that we absolutely cannot restrict the ownership of guns, blah, blah, blah. Not only are those conversations, broadly speaking, Lewis, rarely too useful, but in the wake of these types of incidents, you're not going to get anywhere. They are worthless conversations to have with the average no-holds-barred gun enthusiast.
Right. I mean, guns are so prevalent and so much a part of our culture. I don't know if it even makes sense to talk about guns as part of the problem in any of these situations, really.
In what sense?
in that just there's always going to be guns readily available, and that you have to attack this problem on a social level instead of a tangible one.
Oh, no question, no question. And we've talked about that before. But that being said, so I see what you're saying. We still need to figure out the gun side of it, but there are countless other discussions that may be more productive to have with the types of individuals I'm describing. I agree with you 100%. Police have killed an ex-football player who had been in a car accident and was running to them for help. The police officer involved has been charged. I'll give you all of the details. Early Saturday, Jonathan Farrell, 24 years old, former Florida A&M football player, he is in a car accident, in an apparent car accident. He was looking for help at a nearby house, according to a statement from local police. A woman answers the door after he bangs on it in the middle of the night, doesn't recognize Jonathan Farrell, calls 911. Officers show up. They think it is a breaking and entering call. They find Farrell not too far from this home where he had sought help. And police say that as they approached Farrell, he started running towards the officers. The officers, feeling that they were in danger, attempted to taser him. Police said he continued to run towards them, and that is when Randall Carrick, an officer, fired his gun multiple times, hitting Farrell multiple times. Farrell died at the scene. Police are saying, in retrospect, it became clear that Farrell was running towards them for help. He had been in a car accident, middle of the night, clearly a complicated situation. Police said initially that the encounter was appropriate and lawful, Lewis, but later on in the day, they said they investigated this and that the subsequent shooting of Mr. Farrell was indeed excessive, and that Officer Carrick, did not have a lawful right to discharge his weapon. I have to tell you, I believe that is the right analysis, and I am shocked that so quickly the police department actually said it.
Well, I think in situations like this, there really are no questions. I mean, it's clear that he was in a car accident. It's clear that he was trying to get help. You really can't, I don't know, you can't get around those details because it was all right there. But in many other situations, when you've got someone who is just on their own, no one knows about any accident, that's when things can get a little foggy.
In other words, when there's you're really alluding to the George Zimmerman situation. George Zimmerman claims that Trayvon Martin did all this stuff, that he was threatened, that he shot him. Trayvon is dead. Not only do you not have real bona fide witnesses, but you only have the word of the individual who chose to use force. So you're making a good point. Officer Carrick is 27 years old. He turned himself in for booking on Saturday evening. He was released on $50,000 bond, according to the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office. He joined the police force in 2011. His first appearance in court is today. Farrell apparently had walked about a half mile to the house, and he was, quote, banging on the door viciously to attract attention. I actually understand if you are the woman whose door is being banged on at 2:30 in the morning, you're woken up, you go downstairs, you don't recognize the person, they're incredibly agitated, you don't know what's going on. I understand being that woman and being scared and calling 911. She is not a professional. However, a group of police officers show up and they are not able to, together with the training they have, ascertain that this is an unarmed man and not shoot him to death with multiple shots. I don't blame the woman at all for being scared. I would be scared too in that situation, Lewis, but it's the police where I'm questioning, how did nobody say, hold on a second, before we shoot this guy multiple times to death here, before knowing anything else, let's try to figure out what's going on.
Right. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think these cops were just cowards, like so many that we talk about here. And I don't understand how they don't realize that they need to give civilians the benefit of the doubt in situations like this. This whole just shoot first mentality is completely insane, and the punishment for these crimes needs to be 1,000 times more severe. This cannot be happening.
I don't really care very much about Miss America. And yesterday, in fact, I was actually watching TV last night. I was watching the Red Sox play an incredibly great game against the New York Yankees, and it was all magical, Lewis. But I did happen to flip by Miss America, And it turns out that Miss New York was crowned Miss America, and Miss New York happens to be Indian American Nina Davuluri. And this should have been a fascinating, eye-opening opportunity to say, wow, this is the first Indian American to win Miss America. Clearly, the U.S. is a country of immigrants. It is a melting pot country, and it is one we're embracing diversity. We're recognizing beauty in all forms. This is fantastic. However, within minutes and then in the hours after her victory, Twitter and all sorts of news blogs and news websites reporting on her victory were predictably riddled with anti-Muslim, anti-Arab comments. Now, if you're hearing me say this, you're probably saying, hold on a second, David, I thought you said she was Indian American. What does that have to do with Arabs? And what does that have to do with Muslims? And that's the absolute right question to ask, because the answer is nothing. It has nothing to do with Arabs, and it has nothing to do with Muslims, but that doesn't matter. Here's some choice comments. Well, they just picked a Muslim for Miss America. They must have made Obama happy. Maybe he had a vote. Here's another tweet. I am literally so mad right now. An Arab won Miss America. Yeah, we've got a serious problem, Lewis. We have a serious problem, not only because of if she were Muslim, why would that even be bad, right? That's layer one of the analysis. Layer two is lack of cultural awareness. And this is the same thing we saw. Remember the Sikh shooting, the shooting at that Sikh temple in Wisconsin, and the misunderstandings that so many people have. Number one, you shouldn't get shot for being a Muslim. But by the way, we're talking about Sikhs, not Muslims. Total lack of cultural awareness going on.
Oh, of course. And I don't think you're going to find any cultural awareness coming to us from the xenophobic crowd. I mean, that's the whole point of it, really. There is no cultural awareness. If you're not white, you're a bad guy.
Fox News radio host Todd Starnes said that the American-born Miss America doesn't represent American values. How does she not? The daughter of immigrant parents who goes on to have a great presence in the country where she is the first generation to be born. This is the American story. What is more American than the story of Nina Davuluri? I can't think of anything more American than this story.
I can only think of one thing, and that's the story of some grumpy old schmuck who hates everyone who comes to this country.
A couple of other tweets. If you're Miss America, you should have to be American. Okay, well, she checks that box. I guess we've got that covered. And 9/11 was 4 days ago, and she gets Miss America. Yes, how dare you give an American-born Indian American the Miss America crown a few days after the 12th anniversary of an event that people from India had nothing to do with, and even if they had, this woman and her family personally had nothing to do with. How disrespectful, Lewis, to the victims of 9/11.
Of course. So there's no respect here. This across the board. It's just a total lack of respect.
Alternet has a write-up which talks about a series of emails involving the police chief involved in the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman case, and the police chief involved, the chief of the Lake Mary Police Department, which is investigating this most recent George Zimmerman outburst where he allegedly threatened his wife and her father with a gun, but then she changed her mind. Charges may be filed. He says he agrees that Sandy Hook waiting to happen is a good way to describe George Zimmerman. This is just unbelievable. A resident of the area, Santiago Rodriguez, wrote to Steve Bracknell and said, Zimmerman is a Sandy Hook, Aurora waiting to happen. And then in a response, the police chief here, Bracknell, replied, your reference to Sandy Hook, I agree. Rodriguez also wrote, sooner or later, another mother and father is going to be on CNN lashing out against the system due to this man snapping. Bracknell replied to that. As for your final thoughts, again, on a personal note, I agree. The police chief and his spokesperson have not commented on this, but they have confirmed that these messages are authentic, that he did indeed write these things. Lewis, even the police department here recognizes that George Zimmerman is a ticking time bomb ready to explode. We've got a serious problem because now what do you do? What can you do preemptively here?
That's tough to say. I mean, I wish there was a psychological component to the trial where perhaps a judge could have said, well, as part of this, you need to seek counseling or you need to, do something along those lines.
Yeah, but when you're acquitted, it means you acted in self-defense. So there's no reason, there's no make good necessary, right? I mean, it's abundantly clear to all of us, Lewis, what's going to happen, isn't it?
Well, unfortunately, I hope it doesn't happen. I would like to think that Zimmerman would not want to go through that whole ordeal again, but it seems like he's a very unstable man.
No, that would be logical, sequential thinking that you're kind of saying, well, this is what happened the last time I did this, so now I'm not going to behave in a way that would cause it to happen again. That's not the type of thinking that clearly he's exhibiting. Big news about our Fall 13 membership special. This was the membership special going on last week, where in addition to a 1-year membership, you get a David Pakman Show hoodie and a sticker all bundled together. Of course, you go to davidpakman.com/fall13 to sign up. We've decided to extend it for 1 week. There were a bunch of people who emailed me saying they want the deal, but they want a zip-up hoodie instead of a pullover hoodie. We can do that. If you want the zip instead of the hoodie, just email us right before or right after you sign up. We'll send you a zip up. Some people apparently prefer the zip up, Lewis, which is fine. Also, if you just want the sticker, a handful of people said, I've got lots of hoodies. I even have one of your hoodies. I don't want that. I just want the sticker. That's fine. You know what? You don't even need to pay the bundle price. If you just want the sticker, just get a regular yearly membership. It has to be a year membership. And then just email us and say, hey, I want the sticker. I heard David mention it. Here's my address. Send me the sticker. No reason to pay extra, right, Lewis? If you just want the sticker, the stickers help us promote the show. We want to get them out.
Remember that?
Well, we would do that. That's kind of for a different thing. But anyway, let's take a break. Facebook.com/David Pakman Show. And of course, the membership special going on 3 more days. DavidPakman.com/fall13. Stay with us.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Our program is made possible in part by liberalbias.com. Are you worried about liberal bias in statistics, math, other reality-based things? If so, just go to liberalbias.com, which shows you how to unskew reality and make it easier for conservatives to handle. Liberalbias.com. Today's new member of the day is Kirk Stanton. Kirk, thanks for being a David Pakman Show member and back by popular demand for 1 more week. You've got a great way of joining Kirk as a David Pakman Show member. Go to davidpakman.com/fall13 and get a 1-year membership, a David Pakman Show hoodie, and a bumper sticker, all bundled together. Very, very exciting stuff. Amazon items. As you know, you can support our program with the Amazon shopping you already do. If you go to our website, davidpakman.com, click on the Amazon banner on the right side of the page, and then just do your shopping. When you check out, Amazon sends us a little kickback. It's a great way to take money away from Amazon and send it to supporting alternatives to corporate media. Lewis, very, very interesting Amazon items this week. We get a list every week of items that were purchased through our affiliate link on our website. We don't get any identifying information, just a list of items. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, 1983, the first episode. This seriously brought back memories. I don't know if you ever watched Mr. Rogers as a kid, but when I first moved to the U.S., and I was told, my parents were told, you know, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, it'll help him learn English, and it's a really good thing. And I remember the first episode I watched, Mr. Rogers was at a crayon factory. I thought it was the most amazing thing, and I have to tell you, I was hooked at that point.
I did watch Mr. Rogers. I loved it. We were neighbors. We were good buddies.
Yeah. And then somebody buying Dr. Strangelove. That's a really good movie that I haven't seen in years, of course, with Peter Sellers and George C. Scott. very good taste in films, Lewis. Our audience, Dr. Strangelove is an absolute classic.
Yeah, great movie. Kubrick's best film by far.
Oh, you think it is the best?
I think so, yeah.
I really like 2001: A Space Odyssey, but a lot of people who I recommend it to, and I warn them, you've got to just be patient. You have to be in a certain mood because it develops kind of slowly. A lot of people end up hating that movie, but it is still probably my favorite.
That's a good one. That's a good. I love the humor and the dark humor of Doctor Strangelove.
The other thing is tons of people are buying chia seeds through our Amazon link. I have never tried chia seeds to my knowledge, but I hear that it's all the rage now. People are putting them in smoothies, milkshakes. They're making them into a powder, snacking on them. I have no idea. I'm not into the whole chia seed thing yet. Not because I'm against it. I've just never tried them. But so many of our viewers are buying these things in huge bulk packs.
Yeah, chia seeds, they don't really taste like anything.
Oh,
but,
good.
Seeds are one of the best things you can eat, and chia seeds are among the top. And I eat them. They're good.
Lewis snacking on chia seeds, explosive headlines on the David Pakman Show. Okay, so remember, do your Amazon shopping through our link. You'll support the show. It won't cost you any extra. Last week, I talked about a statement made by Richard Dawkins where he appeared to be defending what he described as mild pedophilia, and defending it not in the sense of saying that it was good, but simply saying it's not really as bad, and sometimes the worst part is the reaction people have to the molestation rather than the molestation itself. In any case, I wasn't the only one saying this, but YouTube blew up. We had hundreds of negative of dislikes of the video, negative comments, people saying I'm out of my mind. Fortunately, I wasn't the only person who interpreted Dawkins' comments in this way. And Richard Dawkins felt that he had to issue a clarification, which he did. And he said, listen, all I'm saying is that I am not defending the act. I am not defending the pedophile. I am not doing any of that. He says, I made light of my own bad experience. To excuse pedophiliac assaults in general or to make light of the horrific experiences of others was 1,000 miles from my intention. And he goes on to explain how the trauma that comes from the reactions to some of these abuses is sometimes just as or more damaging than the abuse would be in and of itself. And he was not in any way defending any type of pedophilia or making light of anyone's experiences. He was speaking only about his own. So fine, he's clarified his comments and now we understand. But to criticize me when there were so many, Lewis, who interpreted the comments the same way, I mean, I was at least on the ball enough that he needed to issue a clarification, if nothing else.
Right. I guess that's some redemption for us. I mean, if he needed to clear it up, clearly it needed to be cleared up. And yeah, don't hate.
And it has been cleared up, and we are glad that he is not defending pedophiliac assaults, because that would be ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Remember when Paula Deen was outed as an incredibly bigoted racist? Well, she hasn't really been on TV since then. She made her first public appearance in months, and I'm going to show you the video. She got a standing ovation that reportedly lasted 10 minutes. She was crying. You can see her kids in the background drinking water. I don't know why they're drinking so much water, but they are. They're there drinking water. Let's take a look at the video, Lewis.
That's an ugly cry, Mama.
This is my first time out in 3 months. I've said all along that the one place that I would want to make my first step back out was Texas.
I just do not understand this. She got caught being incredibly racist and apologized as a result of it, went off the radar. How does that warrant a standing ovation? Who shows up at a cooking show, presumably one you paid to go to, and then you give this woman a 10-minute standing ovation for what? For what? Because she's embarrassed that she got caught being incredibly racist? It's not like she decided, you know what, I've come to my senses. My racism over the last I don't know how many years is so bad, I'm going to decide to change. No, she got caught. She got fired from her job because they didn't want to associate with such a racist woman. And now she's back out and she's crying and people are cheering. I don't get it, Lewis. I really don't get it.
Well, there were a lot of people defending her throughout this whole thing, and she has a huge fan base. And I'm not going to say this about all of her fans, but I'm sure a lot of her fans were totally fine with the racism.
They were. I got emails from them. I mean, what Lewis is saying is factually accurate. I got emails from people saying, listen, yeah, she's a racist, and what's the big deal? Black people are a problem in this country, and she's completely right in what she said, and I support her and defend her. And some of the people that showed up, Lewis, made little signs that were supportive. Stephanie Young had some placards from last year's show, and then she also made some kind of a sash that was apparently supportive of Paula Deen. It's just unbelievable what's going on. She shouldn't be on TV. We have enough TV cooks and chefs that we don't also need racist chefs on TV, right? I'm not suggesting, by the way, when I say this, I'll get emails from people, Lewis, saying, I'm suggesting her First Amendment rights be violated. No, I'm saying private companies should choose not to do business with such an openly racist woman. That is not an example of the government limiting her right to free speech, which would be a violation of the First Amendment. This is just about companies making smart business decisions. Don't hire the racist. She clearly had some racist fans. Some of them are giving her a standing ovation, and she's in tears while her kids chug water in the background. What a bizarre scene we have in this country.
It's very strange, and I assume that the big networks, the big television companies, will not be hiring Paula Deen anytime soon.
I think you're probably right about that. Am I wrong? Let me know. I would love to hear from you. California has voted to increase the minimum wage to $10 per hour. It still needs the signature of Governor Jerry Brown, but he is supportive of it and he is expected to sign it. The federal law has the minimum wage at $7.25 right now. The highest minimum wage in any state right now is $9.19 per hour in Washington. This was passed in California. It was an expected party line vote, Democrats voting in favor, Republicans voting against. It is still going to take a little while to take effect. It will not fully take effect until January 1st of 2016. It will go in steps until then, after it is finally signed. This is actually a big deal. I mean, you know, Lewis, that there are divergent views about the economic effect of increasing the minimum wage. There are those who support a higher minimum wage who say you're putting more money in the system and you are allowing people to have more purchasing power. It brings people out of poverty. It actually then saves the government money because some of those people no longer qualify for government benefits, and it actually is fiscally conservative. There are the opponents of increasing the minimum wage, saying that you are artificially setting a price floor above what the free market would dictate. You are putting the strain on businesses. It is hurting profit, and long term it will hurt the economy and it will cause inflation because prices will go up. So let's explore that, right? It's true that if we take an extreme example, if we were to make the minimum wage $100 an hour, that would damage the economy. It would cause significant inflation. It would wreak all kinds of havoc. We're not talking about that, though. We're talking about an increase to $10, a $10 minimum wage. And we've seen countless studies, Lewis, that show even for big companies with thousands or tens of thousands of employees, if they had to double the minimum wage, it would only cause some fractional relative to the 100% increase in their minimum wage, corresponding increase in prices. So we know that you increase the minimum wage, people earn more. The price increase that is required to maintain the same level of profitability, as Lewis has talked about on the bonus show many times, is only a fraction of that. And you are actually making it so people have more purchasing power. They're spending more money on on buying products and services from businesses, and you're pulling some of them out of welfare eligibility. This should be a positive thing.
Of course. I mean, logically, the businesses that this is going to affect the most are also the businesses that are going to reap the most rewards from it.
No question about it. And again, we'll now have the chance to see what happens. Now, bear in mind, because it's not going to go into effect until 2016, the inflationary effect, the change in prices and wages that should correspond to that from now until 2016, there would be some increase anyway, simply to keep up with regular inflation of around 2.5 to 3%. So in 2018 or whenever it is that this is reviewed and we see what was the economic effect of this minimum wage increase, just remember it's 2013. I know it's 5 years away, but I'm telling you now, remember that there would have been inflation and the minimum wage should have kept up with that anyway, aside from this broad-based minimum wage increase. So just remember that. And if not, I'll remind you in 2018 when we revisit this and see what the effect is. I think that this is going to be a positive thing in California.
I think it definitely will, but a lot can happen between now and January 1st, 2016, and I'm sure there will be a ton of opposition to this.
All right, let's take a break. Back with plenty more right after this. Facebook.com/David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Several times on the show over the course of the last couple of years, I've alluded to this idea that we have to consider the actual effect of terrorism compared to other ways that individuals are killed or harmed in the context of how much money is spent on that and how much money is made around the industry that lives off of the fear of any particular way that Americans might die. And on the heels of those discussions that I've been increasingly interested in, there's a really good article in Truth Out by Michael Muir, which I encourage you to read, which is called Cantaloupe versus Al-Qaeda, What's More Dangerous? And it outlines how, based on the documents that Edward Snowden released, there has been an exposure of the incredible amount of money that the U.S. spends on threat assessment, terrorism prevention, and all of these kind of related areas of expenditures, and that it's completely disproportionate to the number of people who actually die from terrorism year in and year out. So in 2011, and this is from Michael Muir's fantastic article on Truth Out, in 2011, the year of Osama bin Laden's death, the State Department reported that 17 Americans were killed in all terrorist incidents worldwide. That same year, a single outbreak of listeriosis from tainted cantaloupe killed 33 people in the United States. Foodborne pathogens also sickened almost 50 million people, hospitalized over 125,000, and caused over 3,000 deaths. This is a typical year, not a particularly a problematic year. So, factually speaking, more people died from contaminated cantaloupe in 2011 than from Al-Qaeda, yet the U.S. spent $75 billion across 15 agencies trying to prevent terrorism that year, while the FDA, for all of the problems the FDA has that have nothing to do with not having enough money, that have to do with corruption, but the FDA couldn't even they were struggling to get about $1 billion in 2014 for food inspection, which is something that we absolutely need. Now, you could play devil's advocate, Lewis, and you could say, well, hold on. The reason only 17 people died of terrorism in 2011 was because so much is being spent, but the facts don't really correlate with that.
That's true. And of course, there is also, profit but the overall, illusion of control, which Americans like, I think, to an extent. But it's hard to focus and say, well, okay, we're only going to combat terror and focus on terror when we're dealing with people who are trying to obtain weapons of mass destruction. It's like, how do you narrow it down? How do you do that? Because there is the potential for serious destruction.
Yeah, and we can't forget, Lewis, that we've got to follow the money trail. There is way more money to be made from evaluating and preventing terrorism than there is from preventing foodborne illness. I mean, just think about it. The wars, weapons, the entire military-industrial complex, consulting, mercenary security services. There's a lot of money to be made from the threat of terrorism, whereas there's not that much money to be made from the threat of foodborne illness, and we've got to follow the money. Glenn Beck, very quick Glenn Beck clip for you, saying President Obama can get away with murder because he is both likable and black. Notice the big silver balloons adorning Glenn Beck's studio. Very odd. Watch this.
Now, I do contend that he didn't earn that. I do contend that he was selected, that he was chosen by the Soroses of the world, that he didn't earn that. He gave a good speech that I don't know if he even wrote. He was a good speaker. He was somebody that everybody knew that you'll get away with murder because he's likable and he's black.
I don't have that much to say about this. It's good to kind of catalog and be aware of the utter disconnection from reality that exists over on the Glenn Beck program. But I thought it was the black people who were disproportionately punished, arrested, charged, and served prison time for crimes. I didn't think it was black people who were able to get away with crimes. I thought they were disproportionately charged with crimes. And when it comes to nonviolent drug offenses, put in prison for nonviolent offenses disproportionately compared to white people. I think Glenn Beck's got it backwards here.
Yeah, it's also funny because you could take just about every president in history and talk about how Obama is disproportionately accused of atrocities, right?
Right, that's right. He is a Muslim. He's foreign born. He's foreign raised. He's a socialist. He hates sports. He hates white people. He hates America. He's a reptilian shapeshifter. The line, it's very long. And by the way, if you want to talk about people literally getting away with murder, George Zimmerman got away with murder under the ruse of his stand your ground self-defense claim. He was not likable and he was white. So where is Glenn Beck on that? It really doesn't make any sense to me. No. But I just don't really fully understand that. And I know Lewis wants to comment, but we've got to go to break because we have so much more coming up. DavidPakman.com/fall13. Don't miss the membership special, and we'll be back after this.
The David Pakman Show at DavidPakman.com. The David Pakman Show at DavidPakman.com.
The FDA is now admitting that some chicken meat might contain small amounts of arsenic, even though they are stressing that it is too small an amount to be dangerous to people who eat it. They said that there is a new study which shows that an ingredient in chicken feed that contains arsenic called roxarsone may make its way into the parts of the bird that are consumed by humans. Previous studies indicated that arsenic was eliminated with chicken waste. However, some people disagree. They say that no, the FDA always said that the arsenic was eliminated with chicken waste, but that there weren't actually reliable studies which indicated that. So as a response to this, Lewis, there is actually a lawsuit against the FDA. And it's the consumer advocacy group Food and Water Watch, which announced that they are suing the Food and Drug Administration, saying, listen, we filed a Freedom of Information Act request regarding records about arsenic-laced drugs, and the FDA did not respond, and we believe they were deliberately hiding information they knew about this because they didn't want anyone to know that the arsenic in the chicken feed was getting into the actual chicken. This is not good, and the FDA says that they are now going to ban and eliminate that additive from chicken feed. So it's one of these things where, listen, we didn't want to talk about it for years, and we always said that it wasn't in the food, but it does actually get into the food components of the chicken that you eat, but it's not bad for humans, but we're banning it. So that always is kind of a red flag, isn't it?
Right. Red flag number one is why is Pfizer making an ingredient that goes into chicken feed?
That's a very good question. Very, very, very fair question. I didn't mention that Pfizer makes that additive. Go on.
Right. That's really the number one question here. How is this allowed to happen? Why is it necessary? And why is Pfizer involved with chicken feed?
Two vegetarians sent me this story, and I actually think that it's great that individually, as vegetarians, they still care about what's going on with meat products, but this isn't really a vegetarian or not thing because there are pesticides in produce. We talked about just earlier on the show, deaths from listeriosis in cantaloupe. We had the spinach debacle, Lewis. There are preservatives in boxed foods that don't contain meat. I mean, you need to just be aware, and it's if you have decided to be a vegetarian, that's great, but that doesn't put you outside of the risks of the big food system that is really in place in most of the country and most of the foods that are sold in supermarkets.
Right. And also just be aware that the FDA is a joke and owned by corporate interests, and really never trust the FDA.
There's a waitress named Tori Christina Jenkins who works at Red Lobster who received this receipt for a credit card bill that she brought to the table, and instead of a tip, it simply said, "None, nigger." Tori Jenkins is a black woman, and she gave the receipt to her father, who posted it online. She has now been suspended because she made public a receipt, which is against company policy. Addicting Info is reporting on this, and a spokesman for Red Lobster, Mike Bernstein, said that the suspension with pay is standard procedure when a company policy is violated. In this case, it is publicly posting a receipt, which Jenkins's father did on Facebook Sunday night. Bernstein went on to write, "We take this extremely seriously. This kind of language is completely disgusting and has no place in our restaurant or anywhere else, and we're committed to getting to the bottom of what has happened as quickly as possible." It's pretty clear what happened. You had a racist customer who didn't leave a tip. You must have their name because you do have their credit card number, which and that information, when you swipe, it takes that information off of the credit card. I'm sure by now the customer has been told they can't come back to the restaurant anymore, right, Lewis?
I doubt it. I think part of what's happening here is that the entire receipt was posted online. The name of the person on the receipt was not blurred out. So anyone who wants this person's name can access it online, and now the whole world knows who this person is. So I think that's the main reason why she was put on, well, paid leave. I don't know what you call it.
Yeah, what Red Lobster really seems disturbed about is how much attention this is getting, especially after they suspended the waitress. And there's actually a fundraiser to donate her lost wages and tips. Because, of course, if you are in food service and you're put on administrative leave with pay, I don't know how much you get paid, but I assume you don't get your tips, Lewis. That's just my sense. There was an initial goal of $10,000 that's already been passed. So it's very, very generous. People are realizing that this is not really the best way to handle this. I guess now I'm going to have to stop going to Red Lobster, Lewis.
Oh no, David. I think you have to be honest here. You don't go to Red Lobster, right?
I've never been to Red Lobster, to be honest. I assume it's not very good, but I don't know for sure.
I went once and I was repulsed. It was disgusting, and I felt like crap after. So I would recommend that nobody go to Red Lobster.
Let's go to some of your voicemails. Our voicemail number is open 24 hours a day. Pick up the phone, call us from Skype, 219-2-DAVID-P, 219-2-DAVID-P. Let's listen to one voicemail here.
Hey guys, this is Trey, and I just had a thought about George Zimmerman and whether or not something might happen in the future again. If there ever were to be a situation where he would actually kill somebody else and claim the self-defense, and even if there was evidence of self-defense, do you think that he would get off on that, or do you think that they would not give him a second chance? And would he be more likely then to be in prison for a long time?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like the OJ situation, right? Where the idea is some people believe he was given a too harsh sentence for the robbery involving his memorabilia because of what was considered to be the conventional wisdom with regard to the original OJ murder case where he was acquitted, but most people thought that he was guilty. It would be against the law to do that. So I don't know exactly. The question of whether George Zimmerman would get off if he killed someone again, I think, Lewis, that inadvertently, that's really the question. Does George Zimmerman get off on this type of behavior? But that's not really what the caller was asking, is it?
No, I don't think so. But I think it's perfectly possible that Zimmerman would.
All right, let's get to one more voicemail here. Take a listen.
I work in the food industry, and what Lewis said on the bonus show was true. I have irrational nightmares about my job. But how often do you think educators and scientists have nightmares about the world being taken over by a non-secular idea, where kids are forced to pray heal at nurses' offices, Kids take school trips to creationist museums. These things are actually happening. They are close to their nightmare.
Yeah, I had a nightmare once when I was in science class, and every book I opened was just creationism. And it was a very scary dream. I woke up in a cold sweat, Lewis.
You know, it's funny. These things are happening, but I think these people know that it's kind of a last stand and they're just holding on by a thread. This kind of thing is slowly disappearing. DavidPakman.com/fall13. 3 days left on the extended hoodie, membership, and bumper sticker offer. Support our show. Become a member. You know it's worth it. See you tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.